I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
Spent that whole summer with me in my room watching movies every day.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
Welcome
To the house
of 1,000 movies.
I'm so excited to talk about this movie. Jurassic Park is so great. It's so great. And can we talk about Steven Spielberg for a minute? Steven Spielberg, Jaws, the best shark movie ever made. Jurassic Park, the best dinosaur movie ever made. And then he's got either Close Encounters or E.T., which I think you could possibly say the best alien movie ever made. Does anyone ever consider that like Steven Spielberg is the master of the creature feature? He like owns that genre, especially in his early work. Are you kidding me? Like the best dinosaur, shark, and alien movie. The man is a sci-fi legend. And I don't think he gets enough credit for the sci-fi stuff because he has so many other great movies, but legendary. So welcome back to House of 1,000 Movies. I'm your host, Jeff Rauseo, and today, as you can tell by the title, we're talking Jurassic Park. We're taking a trip into the park, the 1993 box office smash hit, and one of my favorite movies of all time. And of course, if it's on this podcast, it's one of the movies that I dearly love. So as always, I will take you through the production of the film. We'll do a deep dive into some of that background on what was going on, how the film got developed, how it was created, why Jurassic Park became Jurassic Park. And then we'll dive into the cast and the crew, which I think actually surprised me. Even as many times as I've seen this, I didn't know that certain people were involved, which is really interesting. And then we'll get into my analysis, why I love this movie, the real personal touch, and of course, round it out with where you can watch it, physical media, streaming sites, wherever, and some movie trivia and some fun facts on Jurassic Park as well. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the background of this production because it is a really interesting story and several huge pieces of technology came out of this film. So I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but Jurassic Park was originally a novel. It was Michael Crichton. He wrote the book. And much like Jaws, Steven Spielberg read the book, loved the book, and acquired the rights to the book. So he wanted to really kind of develop this world of dinosaurs living alongside modern mankind. He was kind of fascinated by that idea, and he wanted to create another creature-driven thriller, much like Jaws. So at the time, he kind of had two movies floating around. Spielberg had both Schindler's List and Jurassic Park in his backlog, and he actually prioritized Jurassic Park over Schindler's List because he was so excited by the idea. Not that he wasn't excited and passionate about Schindler's List, but he jumped forward with Jurassic Park first. So before they started, as usually happens with a book being adapted to a movie, the script went through a bunch of rewrites and revisions. They actually merged a couple of characters. They toned down some of the violence, believe it or not. I know if you've seen the movie, it's like actually fairly violent, but they did tone some of that down. They focused a little bit more on the character development, and then he made some of those character changes, merged a couple characters together, and added some new scenes, which would work better on film in a visual format. So the filming for Jurassic Park started August 24th, 1992, which is like 2.5 months before I was born. I'm born November of 92. They're filming Jurassic Park while I was born. I love the movie. It's very nostalgic for me. Now, the filming originally started on Hawaii, but they had some concerns. There was actually a hurricane that rolled in, interrupted filming, and so they moved all the production eventually to California, although many of those exterior shots and some of the really great sequences of Isla Nublar and everything that you see more towards the beginning of the film, that is Hawaii. If you go to Hawaii, in fact, my parents were there last summer, and they went to some of those filming locations, and it looks very much like the movie still. It's a kind of jungle island land. So when they moved back to California, a lot of scenes then took place on Universal Studio lots, and that kind of a lot of those interior sequences kind of happened there. They still did. It's incredible. Whenever Spielberg does something with creatures, it seems like they have some issues. They had some issues with the T-Rex. The T-Rex had this foam rubber skin, and it was absorbing the water and causing it to shake. Because that scene there was heavy rain when that T-Rex first comes out. And so they had to sort of alter some of that, get creative with that. They had some of the best puppet masters out there, some of the best special effects guys, including Stan Winston, Dennis Muren. They made it happen. They made it work. What we got on screen was eventually magical. You never know that they had the issues with the T-Rex even nearly as much as they would Jaws, although you don't even know that you have those issues with Jaws when you watch Jaws. But eventually they got through it all, and the filming wrapped ahead of schedule, actually on November 30th. So I don't think a lot of people realize like how quickly even a movie like Jurassic Park can like wrap filming. They finished this thing in 3 months, right? They started at the end of August. They went September, October. By the end of November, they were done. And then Spielberg ran off to start working on Schindler's List. So what a crazy transition that must have been. Now, the production of Jurassic Park, right? The thing that I think makes it so amazing is that special effects work. Not only the puppets and the stop motion, but the CGI work, which honestly looks as good today as, well, I would say it looks better today than most big time Hollywood productions. And that's credit to they use these dinosaur input devices is what they call them. So they animated characters like stop motion puppets. And that's how they got that kind of really realistic looking look and feel for the dinosaurs, especially when they were up close. But then you also had industrial light and magic, ILM. Hugely, hugely important to this project. They created the computer-generated dinosaurs and, digital face replacements for stunt doubles. They took, dinosaur CGI, composited them onto live action scenes. These things at the time took hours and hours and hours for each frame. And that's a reason why Jurassic Park became a little bit more on the expensive side in terms of budget, right? Because you couldn't just render CGI. Even now, CGI rendering takes a long time, but back then it was like meticulous, frame by frame, hours and hours and hours per frame. And the whole time Spielberg is monitoring this from Poland while he's working on Schindler's List. So crazy to have that mindset of like, you're working on Schindler's List, one of the most like harrowing, dramatic, intense movies of all time. And then you're having to shift your focus to like, look at CGI dinosaurs in this, action thriller. It's such a contrast that it must have been really hard to kind of switch that on and off. One other very interesting technical aspect outside of the puppet work, which is incredible, and all the CGI, was that Spielberg was dead set on this movie having digital sound. He wanted digital sound. So they actually funded the creation. Spielberg and his team funded the creation of DTS. So DTS is now like a major format up there with Dolby. If you have DTS X on like a 4K Blu-ray, or if you go into a movie theater, you may have DTS sound. It's very much like Dolby Atmos, Dolby True HD, DTS HD. It's sort of, two sides of the same coin. They do similar things, but this technology was literally developed by filmmakers, by Spielberg. It was supervised by George Lucas, and they did it for the release of Jurassic Park. They wanted that to be the first movie to have it. And their sound designer, Gary Rydstrom, he oversaw the whole process, which included like creating different noises for the film and sound mixing. And it took a very, very long time. So although the filming only took 3 months and it was done on November 30th, they did not complete the movie until May 28th of 1993. So it took 3 months to shoot, but 6 months in post-production. So when Jurassic Park was finally released to theaters later in 1993, it was an immediate smash success. It grossed $50 million in its opening weekend in the domestic box office, which was a brand new record. It ended up doing $357 million domestically and over $500 million internationally on its initial release, which smashed box office records and beat out the previous box office record holder, which was E.T., also Steven Spielberg's movie, from 11 years earlier. So that had held the record for quite a long time, especially where we see like box office records getting broken and smashed all the time now with Avatar and Marvel movies. 11 years in between was a long time. Now, eventually the film has been re-released into theaters multiple times for anniversaries. It had a 3D re-release back in 2013. I actually saw Jurassic Park 3D last fall when I was out in LA. I went to Universal Studios City Walk and I saw it at their theater there. My first time seeing it in a movie theater, it was awesome. So after all those re-releases, it's actually now earned over $1 billion globally. It's the 17th film that's ever hit that milestone, and it just continues to have success every time it's re-released. I saw that 3D release in theaters, and the theater was 3/4 of the way full for a movie that was at that point 30 years old. So it's still got an incredible lasting effect on audiences and will continue to drive ticket sales probably for as long as we sell tickets. Now, in the critical response, sometimes these movies are iffy, but this one got good response. It had a 92% approval rating from Rotten Tomatoes, which wasn't around at the time, so that's culminating all those older reviews. Metacritic score 68 out of 100, which is decent, but audience scores average grade of A. Everybody praised it. Peter Travers from the Rolling Stone, Roger Ebert gave it. Roger Ebert's tough. So Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars. He praised the special effects, but he wanted more awe and wonderment. I don't know what else you could want from Jurassic Park, Mr. Ebert, but I think it's tons and tons of awe and wonder. I mean, what is Jurassic Park? It's literally they see the dinosaurs and they're completely in wonder. It's wonderment at its highest level. So he's a tough critic, but anyway, huge response. Audiences loved it. Box office loved it. And then it ended up winning 3 Academy Awards, including Best Visual Effects. And, to this day, widely regarded as one of the greatest blockbusters of all time and one of the greatest films of all time. So now in the cast and the crew, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg. Everybody knows Spielberg. What else can I say about that? I do think the most interesting part of Spielberg's work here is that he was doing Schindler's List and Jurassic Park simultaneously, which is an insane task. Now, the screenplay was Michael Crichton, but also David Cope helped kind of rewrite that for the screen with some Spielberg input. And the producers, you'll know this name, Kathleen Kennedy from Disney and Gerald Molen. But Kathleen Kennedy is very controversial now, but you can see that she did produce some great films. She has an eye for what's great. And she did a lot more than just, whatever the recent Disney stuff is that has struggled a bit. Now in the cast, we got the great Sam Neill. Sam Neill's incredible in his role. Personally, I don't know if it's his best movie because Possession is a favorite of mine and In the Mouth of Madness are both favorites of mine. And he's incredible in those, especially In the Mouth of Madness. But anyway, great in this role. Laura Dern, also really great supporting actress here. I think my favorite part of the movie with her is probably the raptor chase when she's down in sort of like that electrical facility trying to turn the power back on. Jeff Goldblum, iconic. This may be his most iconic role, right? Sitting there with his shirt open, bleeding out on a bale of hay or whatever he's sitting on at that point. His talk at the beginning of the movie, his little monologues, everything about Jeff Goldblum's incredible in this. And then Richard Attenborough, of course, an iconic role for him as well. Really an iconic role for the entire main cast. I mean, if you look at all of them, even Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, who have gone on to do lots of great things. And Richard Attenborough has a long, long career. But I think if you ask general audiences and you showed them a picture of those 4, I think most people would say Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum might get The Fly. Again, Sam Neill, Laura Dern might get some other responses, but they're probably most well known for their Jurassic Park roles. And then you need a great supporting cast. Samuel L. Jackson's in this. This is like early Samuel L. Jackson. He's just getting started. He's hilarious in this. He's like the comic relief. B.D. Wong, who's now gone on to star on a bunch of other stuff and has played a much bigger role in the Jurassic World sequels. He's a much bigger part of those. Bob Peck, Martin Ferrero, Wayne Knight. Everybody loves Wayne Knight. That guy was everywhere in the 90s. Wayne Knight was I feel like he was a supporting actor, small kind of character role in it feels like 100 movies. But here's where I was most interested. The cinematography, Dean Cundey. I did not know that Dean Cundey did the cinematography for Jurassic Park. Now, I knew him mostly for John Carpenter's films. He did Halloween, which is maybe his most famous work, but he did Escape from New York. He did The Thing, and he's done a lot with Robert Zemeckis as well, including Back to the Future, and he also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Dean Cundey, if you don't know Dean Cundey, his filmography is insane. Let me just read you a few here so you get an idea of what this guy's been involved in. So I mentioned Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, Halloween 2, The Thing, Halloween 3, Psycho 2, Back to the Future, Big Trouble in Little China, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Roadhouse, Hook, Death Becomes Her, Jurassic Park, The Flintstones, Casper, Apollo 13. How about Flubber and The Parent Trap? He also did What Women Want. He did The Holiday. He did The Spy Next Door, Jack and Jill, some other kind of iffy ones lately. But his run from like 1978 when he did Halloween all the way up through Apollo 13 in 95 is one of the most insane runs of films ever. Like, he had an incredible filmography. And then the editor of the film, Michael Kahn. Michael Kahn has worked with Steven Spielberg on every film post Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. The only one he didn't do, surprisingly enough, was E.T. But he has worked on every one of Spielberg's films. He is Spielberg's editor. And his resume is also insane because name a Spielberg film. You have Indiana Jones, you have Saving Private Ryan, you have Hook, you have Jurassic Park, and Schindler's List. Not only did Spielberg direct both of those, but this guy was editing both Schindler's List and Jurassic Park at the same time. Again, what a contrast. But everything all the way up to Ready Player One, West Side Story, and The Fabelmans. And apparently his age is kind of disputed, whether he's 88 or 93. He claims to have been born in 1930, which means he's editing The Fabelmans at the ripe old age of 92 and still doing it really, really well. So incredible editor. I always like to shout out the editors because I don't think they get enough credit. So now the film, right? Why do I love the film? And an analysis on it, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's done analysis of Jurassic Park. And of course, there's the, playing God and the technology aspect of it. And I think Jurassic Park right now, although it doesn't touch on artificial intelligence and AI, a lot of Spielberg's movies have been very forward in that kind of technological look at how humanity is going to potentially ruin what we have. And Spielberg did this with Jurassic Park. He's done it with AI, artificial intelligence, his movie. He's done it with Minority Report. He's very interested in like technology and that technological future. And Jurassic Park is really relevant right now because there is this kind of conversation of, should we be playing God as humans? Should we be creating sentient AIs? Should we be playing with genetics, both human and animal genetics? We are actually at a point in time now in history where, people are trying to clone the woolly mammoth and bring back the woolly mammoth. And yeah, it's not a T-Rex, but they're working on it. They're working on bringing back the extinct animals. And what does that do to the world? There's kind of that question of, are they meant to be extinct? Or were they just hunted to extinction? Or can we co-survive with a woolly mammoth? A woolly mammoth I'm not too worried about, but what's the next step? Are you going to bring back, a giant sloth or saber-toothed tiger or something that's a little more dangerous and not really meant for our modern world? And that could create some issues. And it's really interesting because this was obviously being thought about when Michael Crichton wrote his book and they directed the movie and created Jurassic Park, but it wasn't nearly as close to reality, I think, as it is now with all the genomics work and genetics work that's happening. And, there's this moral question, not only of dinosaurs, but, editing DNA, editing people's genetics, creating designer babies. There's a lot of moral, ethical questions in the world right now that I think we're holding pretty well against, and we're doing the right thing. But all it takes is one guy to have the money to go out and do something crazy, and who's going to stop him? Now, the other thing I obviously love about Jurassic Park is just the way that it holds up. 30 years later, why does the CGI still look so good? I think that's the major question everybody asks is why? And I think part of it has to do with the way they kind of could mask it, because you'll notice that in a lot of the scenes where they're using or puppets or CGI and the practical effects or whatever ILM worked on, a lot of it is a little bit obscured. Like when the T-Rex breaks out of the I don't even want to call it a pen because it's like he's in this massive environment, but he breaks through the electrical fence, right? And he comes out and they're sitting in their Ford Explorers, and it's pouring rain. It's dark, it's pouring rain. It's hard to make it out what's happening. And the T-Rex there, that looks, I think, more believable because of that. Like, it's masked a little bit versus you have these Marvel movies now where people complain about the CGI, and it's like they're in these super bright, super, colorful environments, and then you try to throw CGI on top of that, and its defects and its imperfections are just so obvious. You're not like trying to mask it in any way, and that's just the way filmmaking has changed, and a lot of that has to do with cinematography and the way that a shot is composed and put together and visualized. But I think that's why, like, even when you look at Jurassic World and those newer Jurassic movies, they're so bright. Like, Jurassic World is so bright, and the CGI looks good, but it's also very clearly CGI, where some of the scenes in Jurassic Park that do use CGI, it doesn't, you could tell me one way or another that was actually a puppet or a practical effect, and I don't know that I'd be able to tell. The CGI is just like that good, and it's always obscured. Even when you have like the raptors coming into the kitchen, it's a darker scene. It's darker. It has kind of I think intentionally like poor lighting. Not that it's like badly lit scene, but like it's darker. The electricity is off. When you see the raptors and they have kind of like the genetic code from the computers flowing across them, like all that does is like it obscures the image just enough to mask any of those little imperfections. And they always try to keep them within these really tight environments. And then when you do need to see them out in the open, you don't. Like when they go to feed the raptors in the beginning of the movie and it's bright out, you don't see the raptors in the cage. They kind of play you a little Jaws moment there where we're not going to show you the monster. And it has, I think, two purposes. One, we don't want you to know. We just want you to hear what this dinosaur can do and what it's going to do to this cow we just dropped in. But two, we can't really show it to you because it's going to be exposed in pure daylight. It's going to be pretty exposed. And the only time really that I can think of that they have the dinosaurs in like full daylight or full lighting is at the very end of the movie where they're fighting in the lobby, because every other moment it's dark. It's dark or obscured, or, they don't have to do the full body, or, it's only the top half of a dinosaur. The only other moment would be kind of the race. I forget the name of the dinosaur, but where they all come racing through in a stampede. It's like a gallimimus or something. They're kind of like gazelles almost. But then the T-Rex kind of chases them out. They're running from the T-Rex. That, when you watch that, like you can tell that's CGI. Like that CGI doesn't look that good. And there wasn't much they could do with that scene. But that's the one instance of like, oh yeah, that's obvious. But you just don't see it in most of the other instances because I think it's just really cleverly edited and constructed and visualized in a way that hides some of those imperfections. I think it's really smart. And I think we've gotten away from that where like CGI is just so upfront and in our face, just unabashedly bad sometimes. But we've just like come to accept this, video game look. And Jurassic Park definitely doesn't do that. And I think a lot of people, filmmakers who are using CGI, could learn from that. And it'd be nice if they did. Now, on a personal level, I loved Jurassic Park because I was one of those Jurassic kids, right? Even though I was born, I was only a year old when Jurassic Park came out. I probably got into it really big around 97. When The Lost World came out. I would have been 5 by that point. I was huge into dinosaurs. I was a dinosaur kid. I knew all my dinosaur names. It's my parents will still tell you today, like, oh, you knew all your dinosaurs. Like, this is the one thing they remember the most vividly. It was like I was a 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid who like could say Pachycephalosaurus, which I still remember. But I knew all the dinosaurs. Like, you put a dinosaur in front of me, I knew the name of it. It was like my little party trick at the time. But when The Lost World came out in 97, the Jurassic Park hype kind of picked back up. I remember the toys being everywhere in stores at that point. And, when you're 5, 6 years old, then it became a huge deal. And I started by watching the original. I don't know who gave it to me, how I watched it. I remember watching it at home. I remember watching it in the car because my parents had a conversion van that had a VCR and a small, God, it must have been like a 10-inch TV, maybe a 13-inch TV, but just like a CRT TV up in the top of the back seat. It just like hung up in the ceiling, and it had a VCR attached to it. And I watched a ton of movies on that. And trust me, when in 1997, when you're 5 years old and you got a 13-inch TV in your car with a VCR, you feel like you're watching it on a 150-inch screen. You think it's the coolest piece of technology you've ever seen. So I watched Jurassic Park on that quite a few times. Definitely wore the VHS tape out at the house as well. And, it's just, it just fostered that love for dinosaurs even more. But I think, again, for like film, because when I think about my journey into what made me so crazy about movies, it's, if I go back and think, it's Jurassic Park, Jaws, the original King Kong, and like those were the three. Those were just on repeat. And of course there were kids movies in there too, like Lion King and Toy Story, but like those three, which for a 5, 6, 7-year-old were like pretty mature movies, that most kids might, I mean, every kid would enjoy Jurassic Park, but a lot of kids might be scared of it, even at an older age. I don't know. I was just so fascinated by all of it, and it just drew me right in. And I was like, I need more of this injected into my veins. Give me more Jurassic Park. And I had all the toys, the Jeeps, the Ford Explorers, the dinosaurs that roared. I remember having a like remote control, like probably like 2 foot tall T-Rex. That stuff was everywhere after the Lost World came out. They really merchandised the hell out of Jurassic Park. And that's a big reason why it became so huge for me. It was really in those formative years of being 5, 6, 7 years old where it had this resurgence because of the sequel. But I still watch it today and I'm blown away. Like I said, I saw the 3D. I was in Hollywood and I was like, oh, they're showing Jurassic Park 3D at Universal Studios. Like, I'm there. Count me in. I loved it. It's still just as good. It's still just as iconic 30 years later as it was when it first came out. It's just such a perfect movie. It has that Spielberg action adventure. It has the character development and the great cast of characters. And, it's Spielberg always develops these characters just perfectly. Like Jeff Goldblum and his role as Dr. Malcolm is like equivalent to Quint in Jaws. Like he's just that offbeat character that steals scenes. And you've got Sam Neill, who's like your Hooper, and Laura Dern, is like your Chief Brody. And, he just always has this kind of cast of characters that comes together so perfectly. And Richard Attenborough, he's the mayor. He's the mayor of Amity. Like you can kind of see everything goes back to Jaws in my head when I think of Spielberg's formula. Like there's always that formula of you've got that tight core cast of characters with their own kind of characteristics and features and personalities, and he just develops that, writes a story based on that, and they're always great. Like his formula works. So I just love this movie. It's just near perfect. I wouldn't consider it as perfect as Jaws. It's in a different category when it comes to Spielberg, but I think it's his number 2 movie for me. I'd probably go Jaws, Jurassic Park, Close Encounters. No, I'd probably go Jaws, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, probably in The Last Crusade. I like that one the best of all of them. Then maybe Close Encounters, and then probably Raiders. But that's really hard to make a list of top 5 Spielberg movies. But Jurassic Park is definitely a number 2. 3 through 5 I could debate, but it's Jaws and Jurassic Park 1A, 1B for me. So let's talk quickly about where you can watch this movie. So Jurassic Park is widely available on physical media, which is a great thing. It is available on DVD, VHS, Blu-ray, Laserdisc. I have the Laserdisc release of it, actually still sealed. I still have a sealed Laserdisc release of Jurassic Park. It has a $45 price tag on it, so nobody better complain about modern movie prices. But you can get it on 4K as well, and in 3D Blu-ray format, which might be a little bit harder to find. But basically every format that's ever existed for home media, you can get Jurassic Park on. Like back to Laserdisc. I don't think you can get a Betamax or CED or anything like that because it was past that time. But VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray, and 4K Ultra HD. Personally, your best way to watch it is going to be on one of those platforms. Now, if you want to stream Jurassic Park, you can get it on Netflix. That's the only place you can get it. So it's the only subscription service that's available. It's not available on any free services, just Netflix. And then, of course, you can buy digital copies. They're widely available for between $10 to $15, and you can rent them for $4 or $5. But if you're going to spend the $10 to $15 to buy the digital copy, you can get the 4K release of Jurassic Park for less than that, and you have options. There's a big box sets that have come out. There's a Jurassic Park 25th anniversary box set. There's a new one that has all the Jurassic World movies. I believe there's just a standalone Jurassic Park Steelbook on 4K, and then just a standard 4K release. So you have tons of options. Check eBay, check Amazon, check local retailers. Most of them will have one of those options. And if you do want the whole movie trilogy or the whole set of 6 to date, you can get those as well. And they're all available on the highest quality 4K format as well, which is great. So for some fun facts and some trivia to wrap things up, this one cracked me up when I read it, but we mentioned the T-Rex had a little bit of a wackiness to it because of some of the rain, and it was malfunctioning. Kathleen Kennedy recalled that she said the T-Rex would go into heebie-jeebies sometimes, scared the crap out of the cast. They'd like be eating lunch, and all of a sudden the T-Rex would come alive. And people would start screaming and freaking out. Like, imagine that. Imagine the T-Rex just comes to life because the rain just malfunctions it and it starts moving and stomping around. I mean, that's an incredibly cool thing to have happen, but I imagine very scary at the time. There is a director cameo in this. Steven Spielberg is in the very beginning of the movie. He's the man with the beard watching the female raptor in the pen being unloaded. So very brief, very hidden behind the beard and everything, but he is in the movie. And the producer, Gerald Molen, he played Dr. Jerry Harding. He's the doctor who was out in the field with the sick Triceratops. So they actually had some really fun cameos in this as well. And last fun fact, because this would have been a cool scene and it didn't happen. Samuel L. Jackson was supposed to go out to Hawaii to film Arnold's death scene, his character Arnold. But the hurricane destroyed the set, and so all of that got scrapped, unfortunately, and all we get is Arnold's arm falling down on Laura Dern's shoulder during that scene. But there was supposed to be a scene where Samuel L. Jackson was physically chased by the raptors and then killed by them, and he was really upset because he really wanted to do it because what a cool death scene. If you're going to get killed in a movie, sign me up for getting chased by a bunch of raptors and torn apart. Like, that's a cool death scene, but that may also contribute to some of like the violence that they eventually removed from the movie, because that one would have been pretty gory. We don't really see the raptors tear into anybody. Even when Muldoon's out in the forest kind of trying to track the raptors and they circle him and you get that famous clever girl scene, they don't show it. Just kind of jumps him and the camera cuts away. And so like that would have been a pretty violent scene with Samuel L. Jackson if that had come to fruition. Otherwise, the T-Rex eating Gennaro, the lawyer, straight out of the toilet, that's probably the most graphic that it gets. So that's Jurassic Park for you. One of my absolute favorite movies. Spielberg is a master. It's an iconic Hollywood blockbuster movie. I mean, if you just ask somebody, name a movie, Jurassic Park must come up, 20 times out of 100. It's just one of those movies. It's so iconic. Its legacy is long lasting. There's more Jurassic Park movies apparently being made. I'm hearing Scarlett Johansson's supposed to be starring in them. So they're still going. They've made 6. They've made TV shows. There's Camp Cretaceous for kids, which I'll actually be showing to my son at some point. Seems like a pretty fun show, but there's merchandising everywhere. And honestly, one of my life goals is definitely to have either a Jurassic Park Jeep or a Jurassic Park 1993 or 92, I guess, Ford Explorer. that's a total life goal for me. I just want to have one that I can just drive around town. I've seen a few people with them. I've seen them in person. Like a couple people in the area have had them, and they show up to like community events and stuff. They're super cool. And yeah, I really hope that I can get one someday because I love this movie. I love everything about it. It's just, it's nostalgia for me. It's childhood, and it's a reason why this podcast and things like this even exist. So definitely check it out. It's the best. You guys need to see it. If you've never seen it, crazy, go watch it tonight. Please go watch it tonight. It's one of the best movies ever made. It's consistently great, no matter when you watch it, where you watch it, how you watch it. But if you do get a chance, check out that 4K disc. It's really nice. But yeah, that's Jurassic Park for you guys. Thanks for listening to another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope these deep dives are fun for you. We'll have some more episodes coming soon with guests, more deep dives like this. Lots of fun stuff to share here on House of 1,000 Movies. So thank you all for your support, and I will talk to you all soon. Hey there, movie buff. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of House of 1,000 Movies. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did discussing some of my favorite films. Don't forget, if you're into video podcasts, you can head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. If you're already on YouTube, it's right there, so why not hit it? And for our audio listeners, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you've been enjoying the show, why not show me some love by leaving a 5-star review? It really helps me out, and it lets me know that I'm hitting the mark. And hey, before you go, a quick shout out to our sponsors. By supporting them, you're not just supporting the show, but also the content you love. Thanks again for joining me in the House of 1,000 Movies. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep watching great movies. Take care, everyone.